This is a CBS 12 News special presentation. Hate Rising. The Internet Age of Hate. Sponsored by Morse Life Holocaust Learning Experience.
I think it's horrible what's happening all over the world, but especially in a country like America.
A federal jury decided that Robert Bowers will be sentenced to death.
After the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history,
we must hold accountable those who wish to commit such terrible acts of anti-Semitism, hate, and violence.
FBI is warning tonight of a credible broad threat to synagogues in New Jersey.
Anti-Semitism sort of is a perennial virus. It's been rising for a number of years now in Europe and in the United States.
If you come to Palm Beach County and you do this, I will put your butt in jail. Just that quick. And I don't care if it's 20 people or 200, I'll load those corrections buses up. But they will go to jail and they will get prosecuted, without a doubt.
Hate Rising. The Internet Age of Hate.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on this next installment of Hate Rising. I'm Jim Grimes. We begin with a brief overview of what we're calling the Internet Age of Hate, how neo-Nazis, jihadists, and other anti-Semitic groups have flocked to digital and social platforms to spread their message.
In the shadowy corners of the World Wide Web, where are the kids? Hate and anti-Semitism thrive. Sites and forums praise killers like the man recently sentenced to death for murdering 11 at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018. In this video, on a site called Goyim TV, someone explains step by step how to find and print the latest anti-Semitic flyers so viewers can post or distribute them where they live.
I do see we have a caller in the queue. Caller, stand by.
And this man, wearing a homemade neo-Nazi uniform, streams a weekly white supremacist program.
Dianne Feinstein did die. That was good news. I was glad to hear that.
And if you're wondering how all of this is allowed, it helps to understand the basics about how the web is built. The internet is vast and complex. Most only know what's on the surface, like Google, Bing, and Wikipedia. But deep web is much larger and contains all sorts of information that's not publicly accessible. This includes things like administrative records, banking information, and medical records. Beneath all of it is the dark web, only accessible with an encrypted browser and originally created by the U.S. government to protect classified intelligence communications. It makes users nearly impossible to track or identify.
Now we live in a time where any person can just post something and that could go potentially to millions of people, right? And that's dangerous in a way. It shows you how the internet, how the websites are categorizing.
Ariel Contreras runs the Cyber Lab at Palm Beach State College. He's been working in the tech industry for decades.
How many people actually are visiting these sites? I mean, do we have any way of knowing?
It is a lot of people. You would think that is the minority. No, it's the majority.
Eliminating hate content and criminal activity there is virtually impossible. But today, there is growing political pressure to take action.
Just so we're clear with one another, ADL believes that hate speech is the price of free speech. We have to be willing to tolerate in a free society things we don't like, opinions we don't agree with. But there's something very different between an opinion that you find abhorrent and someone inciting violence against you.
Sites on the deeper dark web like 4chan are difficult to control because they're hosted on computer servers outside the U.S. And when they are shut down, most of them just pop up somewhere new.
Now easier than ever. You know, unfortunately, there's websites like 4chan, for example, that you will think they will be gone and they're not.
Creating and spreading extremist ideas and material is bad enough, but these lines of communication are also being used to recruit, to plan and coordinate action in the real world. It's why government activists and law enforcement are now working diligently to find effective tools and strategies to eliminate these safe harbors wherever they are.
Joining me now for a roundtable discussion on this topic are Josephine Gahn. She is the Executive Director of Community Affairs for the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. Of course, Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw. And down there, Lonnie Wilk. He's the Deputy Director of the Anti-Defamation League here in Florida. And by the way, thank you all for joining us. Lonnie, let's start, or Joe, let's start with you. That piece paints a pretty grim picture of what you're up against, groups spreading these hate essentially unchecked on the internet.
Yes, that's exactly right. And when you consider how much time people spend on the internet, on various forms of social media, it is truly, truly worrying. The ability for hate groups to expand their reach exponentially and faster and wider than ever before is the reality. When you think about the amount of time kids spend on it, it is very, very worrying, and I think there's an increase in radicalization that takes place through the internet. At the same time, a lack of discernment, a lack of ability to think about whether something is true, what is the veracity, what is the source, who's behind it. We don't teach our kids that, for example. And I think we're also in an age of conspiracy theories that often come through the computer. People go down rabbit holes of conspiracy theories. The same with hate, the same with, all of these problems. It's a very, very dire problem, and one that we are very far behind solving, I'm afraid.
Sheriff Bradshaw, some tough talk there. We heard you talking about how to really come down on these people. What has your agency, your office done in response?
Well, early on when these people started, they throwing literature into yards. The people in my Homeland Security Department, the intelligence section, actually tracked these people to where they live in Port St. Lucie. So we had a pretty good idea who they were, what they were doing. The problem that we were dealing with is it was only a misdemeanor to throw this language in people's yards, no matter how bad it was. So it was tough to prosecute them. You actually had to witness what was going on. Fortunately, since that time, Representative Caruso, who did a fantastic job up in the legislature, has made this now a felony to distribute this type of literature or to project it onto a building. So that makes it to where we don't have to witness it. We know who's done it. We can put the evidence together, and then we can arrest them. So it's made it a little easier for us to deal with. But, at the end of the day, I talked to a group the other day, and one question from somebody was, well, really, isn't this just directed toward the Jewish people? At this point in time, yes, it is. But my point to them was, where does this stop? If you don't draw the line now and tell these people, you cannot do this, it will not be tolerated, who's next? Is it going to be the African Americans? Is it going to be Hispanics? Is it going to be people from another country? Where does it stop if you don't stop it now?
Bonnie, the ADL tracks this stuff pretty closely. Here in South Florida, we have a large Jewish population, one of the largest in America. What can you tell us about these kinds of activities here?
So ADL tracks and monitors extremist activity, anti-Semitic, and all kinds of bias-motivated incidents. And we've done so every year and released the information in audits every year since 1979. What we found last year was an increase in anti-Semitic incidents, both criminal and non-criminal, in the state of Florida, an increase of 40% last year. And if you look at the numbers from 2020 to 2022, they doubled in quantity. And so when we look at anti-Semitic incidents, we know they don't live in a vacuum. As the sheriff just said, there's every expectation that those who hate Jews also hate many, many other communities. And so when we look at approaching and dealing with anti-Semitism, it should be an operative example for how we deal with hate and bigotry entirely in our society. And we need to understand that hate against any of us is hate against all of us. Racism is not just a problem for the African American community. Homophobia is not just a problem for the LGBTQ+ community. So we need a whole of society approach to address this rise.
Well, as you've just heard, these attacks against our Jewish communities are not going unnoticed or unanswered. When we come back, we'll look at how lawmakers, activists, and law enforcement are fighting back.
You're watching Hate Rising, the Internet Age of Hate. Sponsored by Morse Life Holocaust Learning Experience.
In covering this current rise in anti-Semitism, we've learned stopping hate is a job that can only be done by all of us working together. Law enforcement, government leaders, and community groups, they all have a part to play in this fight as well.
In May of this year, President Biden addressed Americans with this announcement.
Today, I'm releasing the first ever national strategy to counter anti-Semitism.
That strategy lays out dozens of commitments to help protect Jewish communities. It includes initiatives aimed at improving public awareness, training, and encouraging people to report hate crimes. The administration also wants states to fight back against anti-Semitism.
So I think one of the most critical things that we can do is ask our elected leaders to condemn this sort of activity.
The ADL believes in changing government policies and passing tougher legislation. Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz is leading the way in Congress.
Hate in our community will not be tolerated, that we are united against the extremists and the white supremacists, that we stand together in this community, and we will do whatever we can to push back.
Some want to penalize public colleges by withholding federal funds if administrators turned a blind eye to anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli events on campus. Even the money given to the United Nations, which some see as anti-Israeli, could be withdrawn.
You know, over the past 5 years, anti-Semitism's been on the rise.
Meantime, Florida lawmakers had already been pushing, creating ways to curb growing threats. Representative Mike Caruso saw it happening in his district of West Palm Beach.
We've seen stories in the news from hateful banners being hung from overpasses on highways such as I-95 and the Turnpike, all with anti-Semitic messages. We've seen hateful flyers being placed on cars in West Palm Beach. We've seen hateful flyers being distributed in Jewish communities in Boca Raton with hateful anti-Semitic messages. And we've seen the projection of Nazi swastikas on the CSS building in Jacksonville.
Florida, along with local governments, passed laws enhancing penalties for anti-Semitic crimes, including the distribution of hate-filled flyers or harassing people for their religion or ethnicity.
This filthy Jew, don't touch the car.
Folks, I'm not going to dance around this. These people are evil. As far as I'm concerned, they're just another brand of domestic terrorist. If you come to Palm Beach County and you do this, I will put your butt in jail.
That same tough message is also behind this impactful public service announcement from the Kraft Foundation, in which a father confronts his son about the Boys Anonymous online hate speech.
I saw what you've been posting. Hitler was right. I didn't teach you that. You hide behind your screen, spewing all this hatred and ugliness. You got something you want to say? Get out of the truck and say it to their faces.
What a powerful message. Well, new data now released by the FBI shows religious hate crimes target Jews in America more than every other religious group combined. And Sheriff Bradshaw, again, we heard some very tough talk from you speaking out against this. How do you and your agency control this kind of menace, this hate out there?
Well, you have to send a strong message back to people. This is like everything else in life. The more you tolerate something, the worse it becomes. And you even see this group that started throwing the literature out. You showed a picture of it. Now they started hollering into cars, terrible stuff. You can see the fear on the people's eyes as they're trying to leave a religious institution. Look, people have the right to express their opinion. They don't have the right to intimidate you. They don't have the right to scare you. They don't have the right to cause fear. And they don't have the right to disrupt your life and your religious event that you're at. It's just that simple. Up there, I don't know what city that was. I can tell you something right now. If they'd have done that down here, they'd have been in jail. We're not going to tolerate that. You have to stop it early. Send the message back to them. Doesn't matter whether you think this is all right or not. Doesn't matter if you think we're just throwing literature out. It's got to stop. And if it doesn't, then you're going to pay the consequence.
Lonnie, your education, understanding, they go a long way toward eliminating hatred. And that is a big part of what the ADL does every day. Has your mission changed in this new digital age?
No, our mission hasn't changed. Our mission is more than 110 years old now, to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. I think we are adapting how we apply that. And so we have entire teams within my agency that work to monitor and expose extremism in real life, online, in gaming, and the numbers that you shared about hate crimes targeting the Jewish community more than any other religious community combined should be startling. And so I think one of the things that ADL has done over the last few years in a significant way is to empower students, is to empower young people and parents on how to identify bigotry, anti-Semitism online in online gaming, so that you can have the ability, if you see something that you want to report, we have a cyber safety action guide, which can allow parents, which can allow teens within just a couple of clicks to understand what are the policies of whatever platform you're on, and how can you report an incident to those platforms. We also know that many online companies, many social media and gaming companies have some significant way to go in addressing the hate and extremism that are on their platforms.
You know, what Lonnie said is almost a third of the Jewish population feel intimidated, feel threatened, have changed their behavior, hide their Jewishness, not do community events, not go to synagogue because out of fear. This is in America. This is what is happening. And it feeds into that when people report that they have received threatening messages, whether it's an ugly comment on Facebook or a tweet or whatever. So it really has a chilling effect, and people are feeling threatened. What goes from the internet happens in real life. So we educate. We also need the community beyond the Jewish community to stand with us and to not just support us by words of support, which are crucial. I mean, certainly at a time like this, the Jewish community is mourning. We are in deep despair, and we do need the words of support. But we actually need people to stand up, to be educated about what's at stake, what this means, and actually become advocates.
Well, we can't discuss the issue of anti-Jewish hate without looking back at the events of the last few weeks. We'll talk about the war in Israel with our panelists in just 2 minutes.
You're watching Hate Rising, the Internet Age of Hate. Sponsored by Morse Life Holocaust Learning Experience.
Hamas' sneak attack on the communities of southern Israel on October the 6th was the deadliest single day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. The consequences are still being felt across Israel and around the globe, and certainly here in Florida, where many of us have family, friends, and neighbors who have loved ones who are directly being impacted by these terror attacks. And Lonnie, you're in a leadership role over at the Anti-Defamation League here in Florida, but ADL is an international organization. What are your thoughts as we watch what's happening unfold in Israel right now?
The first few days after the war began, we saw throughout the United States a 300% increase in anti-Semitic incidents over the same period last year. When any group experiences hate or bigotry, those expressions of hate or bigotry are isolating. When you are attacked, when you are vilified, not because of something that you did, but because of who you are, that's horrifying for an individual or for a community. And so we need people of good faith to stand up and speak out and speak as allies to each other and speak as allies to the Jewish community, as Josephine said, especially now. It costs nothing to speak out against hate.
Sheriff, Hamas calling for violence against Jews everywhere. I know your office has been proactive, but talk about what other things are being done to protect places of worship and our Jewish communities.
Yeah, one of the advantages that I have is being the chairman of Regional Domestic Homeland Security for all of South Florida. That gives my Fusion Center, which is the intelligence gathering network, an extra advantage that the normal police agencies don't have. Within minutes after this happened in Israel, We knew what was going on. We knew that there could be bad actors out here that want to use this opportunity to do other bad things in the community. So we increased our deployment significantly within minutes. And we're going to keep that deployment until this thing is over with, because it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. These idiots that are up there in Washington, D.C. have allowed this border situation that we have to be completely out of control. Look, I understand why people are coming through there. You have a certain amount of people that just throw their hands up and they take them into custody. But you have 1.5 million gotaways. Those are people that don't want to get caught. These are people that are bad guys. They're either gang members, they could be on the terrorist watch list. There's already 175 people that have been apprehended at the border that are on the terrorist watch list. So how many of them are in that group that got away, that are going to be in our communities capable of doing bad things? If we don't pay attention to this and we don't increase our ability to keep these institutions secure during this time when the temperature is extremely high on what's going on, then we're not paying attention.
Josephine, you've led seminars. You're familiar with a lot of the research that's out there on anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist activities happening here in the United States and around the world. Share some of your perspective as it relates to what's happening in Israel.
Well, you know, as we've seen and as Lonnie mentioned with previous campaigns, what happens in Israel doesn't stay in Israel. And Jews around the world get harassed, attacked, beaten, murdered. So this is about the hatred of the Jews, the hatred of the left, couched in language of progressivism, is very dangerous because it normalizes anti-Semitism in a way that the neo-Nazi type hate doesn't. Because they're very open about it. Whereas the progressive anti-Israel language is all about justice. So it seems all good and just and fine, and yet it's the one that results in people buying into it far more. And you have Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that is being praised, that its methods are being praised. You know, the sheriff talks about, you know, danger of terrorists entering. There are people within our communities in our country who are already here, who are terrorists on both sides of the spectrum. So this glorification of hate and of murder it's horrifying to see. My only sense of hope, actually, that I felt in the last couple of days, and it's been very tough, is that I think maybe people's eyes are open. Maybe people will start to see these groups for what they are when they hear the sort of praise of Hamas. Maybe they'll start to see that maybe these aren't good people. That's my hope. We always say never again, never again. You know, this is now. It's now. Now is the moment. It's not waiting for something else to happen.
That's all the time we have for now. I want to thank our panelists for taking the time to share their experience, knowledge, and perspective with us, and for exploring the difficult but important topic. We want to close with a story of heroism during the Holocaust, a group that rescued hundreds of Jews from the Nazis during the height of World War II in Europe. Our Lily Ortiz spoke to surviving members of the rescuers known as the Bielski brothers and one of the Holocaust survivors whose family they saved.
That is the fighters, two group of fighters, and you...
The moment you walk inside Aaron Bell's Palm Beach home, front and center are commendations, plaques. Decades-old photos of Aaron with relatives line the walls. All part of one of the most successful rescue efforts of Jews during the Holocaust in World War II.
If you do good things, why do you want to forget? You want to live with that.
These days, he goes by Aaron Bell. But the 96-year-old is the last living sibling of the Bielski brothers, heroes who saved 1,200 Jews from the Nazis, living in the forest through brutal winters, starvation, and the ever-present danger they would be found by German soldiers.
What a person does for survival, a hell of a lot.
With the help of his wife, Henrika, they take us back to the very beginning. It was 1941. Aaron wasn't yet a teenager when the German army invaded the Bielski small village in what is now Belarus. His parents were murdered by the Nazis, other family members shipped off to ghettos. Aaron hid in the forest with 3 older brothers, a place they knew well from playing there as children.
It's hard to understand, but it's a fact of life. That's the way it was. Otherwise, you will not survive.
In spite of his age, Aaron was critical to the success of many of the brothers' rescue missions.
He was the small, very tiny boy. He was going to ghetto and get people because he can go under the wall and he can talk to people in the ghetto and they can go out from ghetto and he take them to the base where they were staying.
They collected guns and stole food from nearby farms. Over the next 3 years, the community in the forest grew. Many of the men, women, and children they rescued stayed to help, offering whatever skills they had.
They have everything. They have bakery, they have doctors, they have nurses, they have fixing rifle, they have shoemaker.
They built underground shelters, wooden bunkers to hide in, many of which are still there today.
They put it together, and here is wooden table. That's all they was living like this.
And they had to do this so that they would not get caught.
German would not see them. The top of the hall was covered by bushes, by branches.
I remember everything that transpired in the woods.
Melvin Blankfeld was there. His family, one of the lucky ones rescued by the fighters from the forest.
I think I'm the only survivor of Belsky's group.
His mother became part of the Bielski Brigade. They joined forces with Soviet partisans and took revenge on the Nazis.
People were just from all sides cutting a piece of ear, a piece of the nose, a piece of the tongue, a piece of whatever they could cut. This is for my mother, this is for my brother, this is for my children, for what they did to a whole civilization of Jews who did nothing more than just Jews.
When the Russians liberated the area in the summer of 1944, 1,200 Jews made it out of the woods alive, thanks to the Bielskis.
This is defiance. This is actually us people who were living in Belsky's partisan camp. This little boy here who couldn't look into the sun, that was me. And the lady behind me was my mother right here.
Their story became famous in books, even a movie. Today, there are thousands of descendants of those they rescued who know the name Bielski and what it means to their families.
There are so many people out there thankful for what you did.
If you can save a person, it's a brilliant thing. Simple as that.
Aaron chronicled his life after the Holocaust in photos carefully secured in albums.
Aaron in the Israeli army. This is his brother Zush. That is my husband here in Israel with his girlfriend.
Even though Aaron changed his last name to Bell after moving to the U.S., he'll always be a Bielski and hopes the world will remember him and his brothers for shining the light of human solidarity in the face of darkness.
Yeah.
Don't cry.
Saved a lot of people.
Sinclair is partnering with Magen David Adom for Sinclair Cares humanitarian relief for Israel. Magen David Adom is the Red Cross affiliate providing emergency medical aid for all people in Israel. Scan this QR code or go to sinclaircares.com to donate.